Are you scared of horror movies? If so, then I have some great news for you. A lot of fictional stories that are told through movies are actually based on real events. And at times, the true events are a lot more unsettling than what was shown in the movies. Hi, I'm V, and today we're going to be going through the top 5 disturbing scary movies based on real life events. Number 5, The Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project, now a true horror cult classic, was likely inspired by the story of Maud Dyer due to its striking similarities and overall tone. Maud Dyer is assumed to have lived in Leonardtown in the 1600s, and a lot of women living alone was not seen as normal back then. People in the town didn't know very much about her, and so she was labeled as mysterious. A deadly plague and a series of poor harvests caused a small community in Leonardtown to worry if they would survive through the harsh winters. The community was deeply religious and puritanical. The townsfolk believed that famine, disease, storms, and bad luck was all a result of witchcraft. A meeting held in the small local church came to the conclusion that Maud Dyer was the witch who had cursed the town with bad luck by calling upon the devil to terrorize the citizens. The Puritan community did not take this revelation lightly. They quickly formed a huge mob with the set intention of running Maud out of town. The mob surrounded Maud's small home and set it ablaze. Maud barely made it out alive through the crowds and flames, only having time to grab a small shawl for warmth. She ran for miles until her legs finally gave out. She passed out from exposure before sunrise, and she was found days later, completely frozen with a small boulder propping up her right hand, and she had raised her left hand to the moon and called a curse onto the people of Leonardtown. It is said that her handprint can still be seen on the boulder. The curse caused blighted crops, infertility, mortality, and familial misfortune. The spirit of Maud Dyer is said to still haunt the forested land surrounding Leonardtown, searching for the men who forced her out of her home. Supernatural events are commonly reported around the area. People will see will-o'-the-wisps, a white dog that causes car accidents, shadow people, thick unnatural fog, and frequent lightning strikes. The folktale of Maud Dyer is eerily similar to the Blair Witch Project, so it makes sense that the movie possibly took inspiration from the tale. One of the co-directors said that the movie was partially inspired by the time they spent in the woods and swamps of Florida. Yeah, those woods would definitely spark heavy inspiration for nightmares and horror movies. Number 4, Poltergeist. The 1982 film follows an ordinary family being tormented by an evil entity, which takes their youngest daughter into another realm. Though the movie is exaggerated, it is based on the events that occurred in a Long Island home, where the Herman family was plagued by a poltergeist. In the early spring of 1958, the Herman family reported a myriad of strange events. Bottle tops and lids randomly, inexplicably popped, ornaments flew through the house, bookshelves fell over, and a statue of Virgin Mary flew through the air and smashed a mirror over 12 feet away from its original position. The family contacted the police. The officer who went to the home to investigate was very unwelcome. He was nearly hit by a soaring globe, and a British press photographer witnessed flashbulbs from his camera levitate off a table when he visited. Priests and ministers from dozens of faiths conducted rituals on the front lawn, but nothing improved. The hauntings just continued. The family became more fearful by the day. Contractors, architects, plumbers, and electricians even investigated the house, finding no issues with the structure, pipes, or wiring. The fire brigade checked water levels. Equipment to measure land vibrations came back empty-handed, and there were no reasonable explanations. The family believed that the events were connected to an indigenous burial ground that was nearby, but they didn't stay long enough to investigate, as they moved out of the house very soon after moving in. The film takes large inspiration from the theory, and if people came to my house, took it over, confined me to a small desolate piece of land, and then built houses over the graves of my loved ones, I would be pretty upset. The set of Poltergeist is actually considered one of the most cursed productions of all time. People who worked on set passed away after and during the movie, half of them caused by grisly, strange, and aggressive events. Number 3, Scream. The popular horror franchise Scream is actually inspired from horrific events that occurred in real life. The first movie is based on a series of horrific, heartbreaking crimes that spanned over just a few nights in the summer of 1990 by a man known as Daniel Rowling, or more infamously known as the Gainesville Ripper. Daniel was born in 1954 in Shreveport, Louisiana. His father was a police officer who treated Daniel very badly. Daniel said that he remembers his dad telling him he was unwanted from his very first memories. The father treated everyone in the household very badly for the smallest things, like breathing in a way he didn't like. There are several heartbreaking stories throughout Daniel's childhood surrounding his father's temper and treatment. Daniel was arrested many times as a young adult for robberies and for spying through women's windows. As an adult, he could not hold down a job and found assimilating into society very difficult. By 1990, Daniel had relocated to Gainesville, Florida. On August 24th, Daniel broke into the apartment of two university students, Sonia Larson and Christina Powell. He proceeded to SA the two girls, end their lives, and pose their bodies in provocative positions before taking a shower at their apartment and leaving. The next day, on August 25th, Daniel broke into the apartment of Christina Hoyt, where he waited for her to come home, then SA'd her, ended her life, and left. But Daniel returned to the scene, thinking he forgot his wallet while he was there. He removed her head, placed it on a shelf, and propped her body up on the bed. He said he did this to add shock for whoever discovered her. Heinous. The events began to gain a lot of media attention. People began sleeping with weapons under their pillows or by their bedsides out of fear. On August 27th, Daniel broke into the apartment of Manny Taboda and Tracy Pauls. Daniel first ended Manny's life and then broke into Tracy's room. He SA'd her and then he ended her life. He posed Tracy's body but left Manny's in the same position he had been in. Daniel Rowling was arrested on September 7th of 1990 for a robbery, and through analysis they were able to connect him to the crimes. He was sentenced to lethal injection in 1994, which was carried out in 2006. Kevin Williamson, the writer of Scream, saw a special about the Gainesville Ripper. It freaked him out so badly that he began to have nightmares about Daniel ending his life. The fear he held is what inspired Williamson to write the screenplay, or screenplay, for the movies. Movie adaptations of people like Daniel really throw me off, so I'm glad that Williamson didn't go the true crime adaptation route. Number 2, The Exorcist. The Exorcist was inspired by an actual exorcism of a boy from Cottage City, Maryland in 1949, and, of course, by the 1634 Loudon exorcisms. Wait, have you not heard about the 1634 Loudon exorcisms? Okay, but I guess I can explain it. I'm not upset that you don't know, I'm just disappointed. The writer, William Peter Blatty, heard about the Maryland case while he was studying at Georgetown University. Starting off in Maryland, circa 1949, a collection of newspapers reported the possession and exorcism of a boy named Roland Doe, or Robbie. Robbie's family was German Lutheran, and Robbie became very interested in paranormal spirits, eventually leading him to desiring a Ouija board, and lucky for him, his spiritually inclined aunt was more than happy to provide him with a board. The Doe family did not begin to experience anything strange until the aunt passed away. After she passed, the family began to experience strange vibrations, odd noises, and flying or levitating objects whenever Robbie was nearby. This was enough to convince the family that the help of their Lutheran pastor, Schulz, was necessary. Schulz arranged for Robbie to spend a night with him so Schulz could properly observe him. I think that this is the only situation where I will ever say that sentence and actually agree with the sentiment. Schulz witnessed the same odd occurrences and suggested that Robbie should be taken to a Catholic priest. Robbie underwent a series of exorcisms that did not go smoothly. He would slip out of restraints, break bed springs, and use them as weapons. He injured one of the priests with them, and he also screamed insults. More priests were called, but Robbie was not any more fearful than he was with just one. The bed shook, objects flew, he displayed aversions to religious or sacred items, and he spoke in a guttural voice. The exorcisms eventually stuck, after 3 priests stood in Robbie's hospital room and banished the demon from within. Robbie apparently had lived a totally normal life after that. He was even described as ordinary. The Loudon possession was a witchcraft trial that took place in 1634 in Loudon, France. A convent of nuns said that they had been visited and possessed by demons. Several nuns claimed that they were having visions of their recently deceased confessor. When asked about who they thought was possessing them, their answers varied. Some said that it was a priest, others said Peter and Zabulon. Physicians and apothecaries were contacted, and local magistrates were informed of the strange claims. Eventually, the Archbishop of Bordeaux was called. He ordered that the nuns be separated, and for a short while it seemed that the sequestration worked. But the nuns' behavior began to worsen over time. They began shouting, screaming profanities, and barking. The convent chaplain decided that a series of exorcisms was to be conducted. The Catholic Church investigated the claims and ended up accusing a priest of summoning evil spirits. He was later convicted of sorcery, which was a crime punishable by execution, and guess what? He met a fiery end on a wooden stake. The nuns underwent exorcisms, and everything did turn out okay, but it was still definitely a strange situation. William Peter Blatty took heavy inspiration from Robbie's 1949 exorcism, and I believe that though he definitely took less inspiration from the Loudon trials, it's clear that he was influenced. Number 1. The Amityville Horror. The Amityville Horror is an absolute classic. It has gained widespread praise and notoriety. It's also well known for being based on a true story. The classic movie, released in 1979, has had many remakes and sequels that attempted to capture the same thrilling energy of the original, but absolutely none of them compare in the slightest. The film gets its name from the events that took place in Amityville, New York, Long Island on November 13th, 1974, in an almost identical house to the one shown in the movie. A 23-year-old man named Ronald J. DeFeo Jr. took the lives of 6 members of his family with a firearm as they slept. DeFeo first claimed that he had come across the bodies, and even went so far as to claim that his family was the target of a hitman. But after only one day, he confessed his crime and admitted that it was him who took the lives of his family. But his reasons for what he did were ever-changing. He first claimed that he'd heard voices. Then he claimed that members of his family had helped him carry out the act. The reasoning has never really been confirmed, just speculated. Still, many remain perplexed as to how physically and mentally DeFeo could have committed these crimes. A year later, the Lutz family bought the house for an extremely reduced price because of the grisly events that had recently occurred there. And upon moving in, they began to experience every single sign of haunting imaginable. Doors would slam, beds would move, ooze formed on carpets, foul odors would linger, the house would remain ice cold. One of the daughters levitated over her bed, and one son would wake up every night at 3:15 a.m., which is the exact time that DeFeo's crimes were carried out. The family did not stick around. They packed up all their items and moved out within a month. The paranormal community caught wind of the house and decided to visit, including Ed and Lorraine Warren. No investigations ever produced any paranormal evidence, but a photo capturing the ghost of a DeFeo family member was supposedly taken. Lorraine Warren, though she did not see anything, did say that she felt a presence in the house. The mystery surrounding the haunting of the house is largely debated, and many say that it's likely false, but the horrific tale of Ronald DeFeo is sadly absolutely true. The true mystery that remains is what could have possibly made DeFeo commit this heinous crime. He was constantly changing his story, and he was the only one who knew the truth. Sadly, we'll never know what happened that night, because in 2021, after years of serving time awaiting his death sentence, his life was finally ended. That brings us to the end of our list. What other movies have been inspired by true events? I'd love to know. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something. Keep it curious. Bye!